running across the yard.
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal or?
A good-sized man, or something that looks like a man.
Okay. You've had problems in the neighborhood before?
Yeah, my dog was killed here just recently. I don't know what it was.
Welcome to Sasquatch Hypotheses.
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sure.
See ya!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
Son of a bitch is about 6'9".
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh. Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, God, he's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
He's looking at me.
And the guy is on foot.
I don't know what... It's a big, real big person.
But it is a person.
Yeah, I'd say it was a person.
Yeah, I was able to look into that stuff that you had brought up when we were talking offline, about the Dyatlov Pass.
About what?
The Dyatlov Pass incident.
Oh, the Dyatlov Pass?
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Yeah,
quite the mystery.
Yeah, did you look into that?
Yeah, I watched a couple of things on it. Pretty interesting.
Did you find any references to that photograph?
To what photograph now?
Did you find any references to that photograph of that, whatever that was, that creature that was peering out from behind the trees that they had taken a picture of? Some of the documentaries and the studies that I've watched about that incident, they mention it, and others they don't mention it. And so I'm having a hard time figuring out if that really happened, or I mean, obviously the incident really happened, but I'm having a hard time figuring out if that creature, that photograph of that creature that they said one of the guys took, if that really happened or if that was just somebody's speculation.
Oh, one of the guys that was killed took a picture or something? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there's...
I think I did run across...
Yeah, it just depends on which... Say again?
I think I did run across a mention of something like that, but I never actually found like the photograph itself I think it was just mentioned once somewhere. And then, because I completely forgot about it.
Well, I have a copy of the photograph, and I'll send you. I'll email you a copy of that photograph. But like I said, it's just depending on which version, which documentary you actually watch about it. Sometimes they mention it, and sometimes they don't. So I'm not sure if that's what that's about.
Well, have you watched any documentaries where they're speculating that it was actually some kind of a Bigfoot that may have done all of this?
Yeah.
Oh, you did? Because I haven't found anything. What I watched said that it was just a mystery, and actually, I don't think anyone even speculated that it was a Bigfoot at all. I think they mentioned it, like somebody said, yeah, and somebody even thought maybe it was a Bigfoot, and that was like the end of it. But based on what I saw... Go ahead.
I saw one where they were speculating that that's what they thought had happened, was that it was some sort of a creature. They were hinting that it was some sort of a Sasquatch-type creature that had ultimately scared these hikers so bad that they had cut their way out of their tent and basically in their underwear and taken off down the side of this mountain in a blizzard. And then, but they were saying they never did find any tracks of any kind of creature that would have been around their tent. And then, these other people were saying when the initial investigators got there and found the site, that they didn't cordon off the area at all. They just went tramping in there, looking for survivors and whatnot. And so there was just thousands of tracks of all these searchers all over the area, and that they wouldn't have been able to find any tracks anyway, which I don't think is likely, because they would have been able to find tracks coming down from somewhere, whether it's coming up from the tree line down below them or coming down from, higher up the ridge line or something.
Right.
I think they would have found some tracks. So I don't personally think that that's what happened. I don't have any theory of what I think happened to them, but I don't think that was what happened to them.
Oh, you don't think it was a Bigfoot?
No, I don't really think it was a Bigfoot.
Well, I don't think that there's any other explanation, actually. I mean, they went in there and they trampled all over the place, and they talk about how some of them left and they didn't even have their socks on, which means they found they found bare footprints.
They were just absolutely unprepared to go outside.
Well, that means to me that they found bare footprints, right? So if you were up there and you saw barefoot footprints in the snow, that would be your assumption, is that they left, they didn't even have socks on. You know what I'm saying? But who's to say that those bare footprints weren't a Sasquatch? Now, obviously I have no clue. And there's really a huge absence of evidence, pointing to anything. But my perspective is that the only evidence that does exist to what did happen is they were scared. They were so scared that they didn't go back.
Right.
They climbed a tree so that they could see where their tent was, meaning they were looking for something to see if whatever it was that scared them off was still there, and that there were barefoot footprints in the snow. Well, the only things that those facts fit is that a Bigfoot was there. And if everyone came in there and trampled all over the place and assumed that the barefoot tracks were from the people who were fleeing, and it was actually a Bigfoot, and then they walked all over them to where you could no longer tell what was what anymore, that would be the end of the evidence. Right?
Right, and that makes a lot of sense. Whatever it was, it scared them. It scared them so bad that the idea of going back to their tent, which is where they had heat and warm clothes, and they had knives, and I don't think they had any guns with them, but I know that they had knives and stuff. All that stuff was up there in their tent. Everything that they needed to stay alive was up there in their tent. And whatever was up there, there was not a chance in hell they were going for it. So,
well, they did find 3 of them. I guess at the very end, they tried to crawl back to the campsite, and they ended up dying of exposure about like 100 feet or something from the tent, trying to get back to it. But
yeah, but. And that's a good point, but you gotta wonder what was out there that was so terrible and so scary that the idea of freezing to death seemed like the better idea.
Well, I could see it if it was a Sasquatch, but here's the thing of it, is that they cut their way out of the tent, and from the photographs, they cut their way out of the tent and then traveled downhill from where they cut their way out of the tent in a straight line to the edge of the woods, almost as if whatever it was that scared them was on the opposite side of the tent, and they were trying to keep the tent between them and it, as if to so that the tent would conceal their escape. That's what it looked like to me. But then I have to wonder.
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me too.
Whatever it was, how did they know it was there? Because they didn't open up because the front tent flap was actually on that side. The side that was opposite the direction they went. So they would have had to have looked out the tent flap. What's that?
I'm not convinced that they ever saw what it was before they left the tent. I said I'm not entirely convinced that they ever actually saw what it was before they left the tent. I think whatever it was that scared them so bad initially, they were just hearing it.
Yeah, actually, and it's funny you say that, because I'm looking at the comments, and Nicole has made two comments. She asked if the tent was destroyed, and it was, but it doesn't appear that it was destroyed by like a Bigfoot or something. It was, they cut a hole in it, they weakened the structure of it. One of the tent pegs was broken on the side where they escaped, and then there was a bunch of snow on top of it. But it had been like, what was it, a month or 2 months before they got up there. So it could have succumbed to just, a heavy snowfall, pushing the top of the tent down because it had been weakened by cutting it open, and one of the tent pegs, or one of the supporting sticks, was broken. And then she also mentions, the same woman, infrasound. And I was actually thinking the same thing when you said that if something was outside the tent in that direction that was using infrasound to try and, get them to come out of the tent, infrasound has all kinds of different effects on people, and it makes people afraid. It makes them, I guess, hallucinate, get sick. I mean, there's all kinds of effects it can have. But the infrasound, if they knew the infrasound was coming from that direction, and it was terrifying them, I could see them cutting their way out of the tent and fleeing like that. And then once they cut their way out of the tent, maybe they saw the thing. Who knows? I don't understand why the thing wouldn't have chased them down to the wood line, though.
I don't know either. When I first heard of infrasound, I thought it was a crock. I had never heard of it, and I got to listening to some other people talk about it, and found out that it was a real thing. And apparently, big cats use infrasound, and I'm not sure if it's for sure or if it's just speculation that some of the great apes use infrasound too. And then after I learned that, I got to thinking, well, that's actually, now that's kind of a pretty plausible idea. And if infrasound was, if there was a Sasquatch up on the side of that mountain, then infrasound actually makes a lot of sense.
Well, I learned about infrasound a long time ago. I mean, I don't remember. I took a course in zoology at Harvard when I was in school. It was nothing like a PhD kind of real course. It was something that they had grade school kids go through, and you got a certificate, and you took a couple of months and that kind of thing. And I can't remember if we learned about it there or if I ended up watching it, but it was around the same time I heard like elephants used in infrasound, and that an elephant, the infrasound off of an elephant, and they can do it when they smack their foot on the ground, that they can actually create an infrasound wave that'll kill a man or a tiger. They've actually killed tigers with it. And they can communicate with each other across like a dozen miles with the infrasound. Yeah, I knew that long time ago. Yeah. So infrasound's been around. It's been known for a long time. I don't think that they were aware of like the extent that other animals used infrasound until, recently, within maybe the last 10 or 15 years or 20 years, whatever. But
well, I've listened to a lot of reports on Sasquatch where they the witnesses, the people that were involved in the actual sighting, said that they had felt like well, usually they always say that they heard the creature emitting kind of it was a low sound decibel wise, but it was a very powerful, like a bass sound, to the point where you could actually feel it in your body. It wasn't terribly loud, but it was very powerful. And if that was what was happening up on the side of that mountain to those hikers that night, it would explain a lot about why they acted the way they did.
Yeah. Well, in the beginning, why they fled, but it doesn't really explain why they stayed gone. Why, and then they separated into two different groups. There was one group that went and dug, I forgot what they called it, some kind of hole in the snow. I think they called it a mole hole or something like that, to try and stay warm. And they ended up dying there, but those were the ones who had the crushed ribs and that kind, and crushed skulls, I think, and those kind of injuries were the ones they found in that hole.
I don't know. I don't know how powerful the infrasound from a Sasquatch could actually get, but they were the autopsies on those hikers. I think it was 2 or 3 of them showed that they had broken ribs and all sorts of internal injuries without any sign of external injuries. And that sounds kind of like what you hear from a concussion blast from a bomb going off or something.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that was one of the theories that I heard on what the documentary I think I watched, was that they said that their injuries were consistent with a blast, being in close proximity to some kind of a blast. So that's where they thought maybe it was a military test of some kind, that they had set off some kind of a weapon, and that's what happened, is that they were caught out there while they were doing this test, and that's why some of them had the injuries that they had. But then they couldn't explain, well, why did they have injuries and the other ones didn't? You know, that was unexplained. The whole thing is a really crazy mystery. You know, they stayed away, so obviously the threat remained for some period of time. And this whole splitting up into two groups. There's a lot of theories
about what actually happened up there.
Yeah, there's all kinds, everything from UFOs to the military, all kinds of theories, but there's no evidence to back up.
I've heard everything from their government was doing, weapons testing up there to I've even heard that our government was doing weapons testing out there, and I really highly doubt that's the case. But there is 100 theories about what happened to those poor people that night. To be honest, I don't think we'll ever know what did.
No, of course not. But I heard one of the theories was that the U.S. government had a group of spies that went in there to spy on, because they had some military testing areas around there for the Russians or whatever. Yeah. And they thought, well, maybe the U.S. government sent in some spies to check on those, and they ran across them, and they said, well, we can't let them go because they'll tell them we were here. And they think that's what happened. But, the injuries aren't consistent. If that was what happened, they would have just shot him. They're not going to, well, let's bust this guy up. Let's cut this girl's tongue out. Let's do all this crazy stuff. They're not going to do that.
Yeah, that's right. I've heard that theory also, and it went on. The theory that I was listening to went on further to say that they were, because the scene that the searchers found didn't make any kind of sense at all, and one of the working theories was that these searchers may have actually stumbled across the scene while they were, whoever did this was trying to cover it up and make it look like something else, and they hadn't gotten the chance to actually finish the cover up, and that's why nothing made any kind of sense when they found it.
Right. Yeah, I kind of wondered if it wasn't the one guy. There was one guy, they said he lost it at one point, and he got crazy angry at everybody. And this was before, because one of the guys got sick. Yeah. One of the guys got sick and he went back. He never actually went on the whole trip with them. And he was talking about how the one guy had kind of lost it. And they said he was a really quiet guy, but then this one time he just really lost it and got like amazingly angry, so bad that they were all afraid of him.
Yeah, they I know who you're talking about. I can't remember his name, but yeah, he was apparently on the way out there. They had gotten off the train at some train station, and he had gotten very irate with some police officers, and they had thrown him in jail overnight, and they ultimately released him the next morning. And once they got further out there, when they were actually doing their hike, there some disagreement over something stupid, like where everyone was going to sleep in the tent or something, had set this guy off, and he had gotten so belligerent and violent that he had actually scared the crap out of everybody else in the group, and they all just kind of avoided him and avoided talking to him the rest of the trip. This was written down in their diary.
Yeah, that was one of the theories. That was one of the theories, is that it had something to do with him. But he was one of the ones they found dead, so it couldn't have been, you know.
Yeah, they found him dead, and they didn't. They had, you know, down there in the woodline where they were, they had one knife with them, and that was the one that they speculated they'd used to cut their way out of the tent. All the rest of the knives were up in the tent still, and they didn't have any guns. So I don't ultimately think that he had anything to do with what happened to them.
Yeah, and the fact that they didn't take any other weapons with them or anything like that, it just points to, I mean, extreme, not just fear, but total and utter terror, to the point where your mind stops thinking, and you just go, your subconscious mind takes over. It's fight or flight, and when you're in that mode, you're incapable of thinking logically, because if you were in a situation where something was happening, and you're military, I was military, we're kind of trained to react to certain situations and to know, okay, you got to do this, you got to get your gun, you got to, all of this stuff that you have to do in certain situations. Even though civilians aren't trained that way, which evidently these people were, because in Russia there's a conscript program where everybody actually has to serve time in the military. So all of these people were
conscription shit.
Yeah, they were all at some level had some kind of training to keep present in situations. So for them to just take off without taking a knife, I mean, whatever's scaring you, a knife is obviously a weapon. They didn't think to grab a knife to fight off whatever it was.
Well, I mean, looking back on what happened to me in Alaska, I can almost kind of rationalize it, because when I was in the middle of my encounter, I had a shotgun with me, and I was so scared of what was going on that it never even crossed my mind to get it out of. I had it in a scabbard on my rucksack, and it never even occurred to me to pull it out.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. If you had seen a mountain lion coming out of the woods, would you have pulled the shotgun?
I would like to think so, yes. I would like to think that I would have pulled the shotgun.
Right, but the feeling that you had, similar to the feeling that they had at that Dyatlov Pass, was so much terror that it completely scrambled their ability to think, as it did to you when you were out there, because you never thought about the shotgun. You were just, that terror level was so high that you just, you go into autopilot, and you don't think about those kinds of things.
When I absolutely agree. Autopilot, it was fight or flight, and for me it was flight, and I got the hell out of there, and I got in my truck, and I went back to my barracks, and after I called my platoon sergeant and told him that I was back and everything, I just sat down I remember sitting down on my bed, and I just cried.
Yeah, it's the release.
That huge weight had been lifted off of me.
Yeah, and that only comes from when it's, I mean, absolute sheer terror hits you. And that's what happened to those people up on that pass. And there's only so many things that I don't think, if it was the military out there doing something, I don't think they would have reacted the way that they did. I think that they would have said, "Oh crap, the military's here. They're yelling at us to come out. All right, put your shoes on. Let's see what the hell they want. Damn military," that kind of thing. They might have been nervous about what they might do to them.
Yeah.
But over there, it was probably commonplace.
Well, there was right. Well, one thing that really confuses me about that whole incident up there on that pass is that did they happen to mention in any of the videos that you watched that the investigation on what had happened to those guys was opened like 2 or 3 days before they were even reported missing?
Oh yeah, yeah. And they said that was an accident. But how do you do that by accident? That would be precognition, I think I need to open this case.
Well, the dean at the school said that he had opened the investigation because he thought it was a different group. There was two groups that were actually out doing this hike. They weren't anywhere near the same areas, but they were gone at the same time frame doing these two different hikes. And he thought it was the other group that hadn't called in and said that they had made it out and had opened an investigation on them, he said, even though he apparently named the people in the group that actually was missing. And he ended up resigning over that.
Yeah, well, he had said what I recall that story being is that the dean told everybody that Dyatlov had notified them that they were on their way back. And so he never bothered to search for them. And when in reality, it was actually the other group that had notified them they were on their way back. But he thought it was the Dyatlov group. That's what I heard them say. I don't know about I thought the investigation I thought was started by the law, but I might be remembering incorrectly.
Well, it sounds to me like the investigation was started by the dean.
Oh, no, I'll have to look again. I don't remember. I might have just assumed it was a law.
Either way, Either way, it was a series of very ridiculous mistakes made. That started that investigation, and it didn't add up. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, and that's how conspiracy theories come up, but it doesn't mean that sometimes crap like that does happen. Just weird crap happens, and coincidentally at the same time, I'm not saying that's what this is, but I'm saying it does happen. You do have weird coincidences that make things look one way and they're really not. But like you said, we'll never know what the truth is. Because regardless of the investigation, if this had something to do with the government and therefore they tried to cover it up, and that's why this paper trail shows an investigation started before they ever should have, blah, blah, blah. There should be some evidence somewhere at the scene that shows that that's what happened. And there's nothing.
Right.
There was snow. There was...
And even...
Go ahead.
I was going to say that, there was nothing. And even if, the government in Russia does know what happened, even if they do know what happens, we'll never know. We'll never find out, because there is nobody in the history of the world that is better at keeping secrets than Soviet-era Russia was.
Right.
And I'm convinced that if anyone does know, I mean, assuming they're even still alive, if anybody does know, they're still not going to say anything.
I think they said the last person that was alive from then just died back in 2012 or something like that. So there's nobody left that would know anymore. So it's pretty much done.
They were trying to pin that on everyone. They were trying to even pin that on the natives that lived in that area.
Oh yeah.
And the natives, they weren't having any of that. As a matter of fact, they were the main ones that were out there searching for these people when it became apparent that they were missing.
Yeah, they got cleared pretty quickly within a couple of days, I think. Yeah, what that one guy said.
It was it's an interesting case, though. It really is. It's I'd love to know what happened out there, but I don't think we ever will. Like you said, that's how conspiracy theories go. And speaking of conspiracy theories, I just read today that the president is releasing all the confidential classified documents on the JFK case.
Really?
So that ought to be interesting. Conspiracy theorists ought to be coming out of the woodwork on that one.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ryan, we've got an hour and 20 minutes. We've gone a little over, and I guess it's time to close out the show. Thanks, Julie. Yeah, I see your comment there. Nicole, the natives never said any. At least I haven't heard anything about what the natives thought. Well, maybe we'll talk some. Maybe next week we'll do another show where we talk all about this Dyatlov Pass thing. Anyway, folks, as usual, if you want to get a hold of me, sassiteblogspot.com is where you can hear the audio only version. I actually need to put the last couple of episodes up there. I haven't done that in a while. And you can get a hold of me at sasquatchhypotheses@gmail.com. Glad you're safe, Ryan. Thank you for your service. Oh, she's thanking you for your service, Ryan. Ryan can still hear me. You there, Ryan?
Yep.
Yeah. Nicole says, glad you're safe, Ryan. Thank you for your service to both of us. All right, folks. Until next time, y'all take it easy.